ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशधारिणे। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare
Jai.
Hare Rama, Jai Maharaj. Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare
Jai Om Vishnu Pad Padamansa Paripajikacharya Ashtottara Satashi Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srila Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Mukund Radha Kundagiri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamana Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Welcome to all, and thank you to Kendra Prabhu, Kirtaniya Sadahari. And we're reading from Chaitanya Charitamrta Adi Lila, Chapter 2, Text 24. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Thirst with some hot water or warm in a glass. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Tadhati Shapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jatapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha, Shri Rupam Shagrajatam, Sahagana Gaganatam Vitamstam, Sadvaitam Savatutam, Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam, Shri Radha Krishna Padam, Sahagana Lalita, Sri Vishakhan Vitamstam. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindho, Deenabandho Jagatpate, Gopesha Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta Namaste, Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi, Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Rishabhanu Sujay Devi, Pranamami, Hari Priye, Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindho Pyevacha, Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindho Pyevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktivinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In this portion of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta, Kaviraj Goswami is explaining his introductory verses to the book, and specifically he's explaining the verse in which he says that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, and that he's Brahma, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. The Brahma is his effulgence, Paramatma is his localized portion, and he's the personality of Godhead himself. And now we're continuing. Veda Bhagavata Upanishadagam Purna Tattva Jarekahe Nahi Yar Sam. Personality of Godhead is he who is described as the absolute whole in the Vedas, Bhagavatam, Upanishads, and other transcendental literatures. No one is equal to him. Purport. There are innumerable authoritative statements in the Vedas regarding the personal feature of the absolute truth. Some of them are as follows, and now Srila Prabhupada is going to be citing a number of them. From the Rik Samhita, Tad Vishno Paramam Padam Sadapa Shanti Suryaha Diviva Chakshur Atatam. The personality of Godhead, Vishnu, is the absolute truth, whose lotus feet all the demigods are always eager to see. Like the sun god, he pervades everything by the rays of his energy. He appears impersonal to imperfect eyes. From the Narayan Atharva Shira Upanishad, Narayanat eva samutpadyante, Narayanat pravartate, Narayana pravartante, Narayane praliyante, Atanityo Narayanaha, Narayana evedang sarvang yadbhutang yadchapavyam, Shuddho deva ego Narayano nutitiyostikaschit. It is from Narayan only that everything is generated, by him only that everything is maintained, and in him only that everything is annihilated. Therefore, Narayan is eternally existing. Everything that exists now or will be created in the future is nothing but Narayan, who is the unadulterated deity. There is only Narayan and nothing else.
What is the verse number, Maharaj? I got second chapter, Adi Leela.
2:24. From the Narayan Upanishad. Yata prasuta jagata prasuti. Narayan is the source from whom all the universes emanate. From the highest Shirsha Pancharatra. Paramatma Harir Devaha. Hari is the Supreme Lord. From the Srimad Bhagavatam. Narayana Vidhanasya Brahmana Paramatmanaha Nishtam Arhata Novaktum Yuyam Hi Brahmavittamaha. O best of the Brahmins, please tell us of the position of Narayan, who is also known as Brahma and Paramatma. Stityudbhava pralaya hetur aheturasya yad swapna jagara sushuptishu sad bahischa dehendriyasu hridayani charanti yena sanjivitani tadi avehi param narendra. O king, know him who is causeless and yet is the cause of creation, maintenance, and annihilation. He exists in the three states of consciousness, namely waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, as well as beyond them. He enlivens the body, the senses, the breath of life, and the heart, and thus they move. Know him to be supreme. So here the supreme position of Narayan, the personality of Godhead, is established with reference to various scriptures. Any comments, questions?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
And this is reference to after Arjuna is seeing the Krishna shows him his Virat Rupa, and then he's saying Arjuna is asking that I want to see your Narayana Rupa. Why is he asking them? And here also, Lord Narayana is being very.
And
why not Shyam Sundar Rupa?
Because why does Krishna show the Narayan form in the 11th chapter? Why does Arjuna ask to see that? Krishna wants to establish, or Arjuna wants to establish, that Krishna is the source even of Narayan. Yeah, I hope all the phones are in silent mode. Is that all right? Okay.
Right, but then there's still some doubt when we're discussing if the Virat group is Satchidanand or is not Satchidanand.
That's pretty far afield from what we're talking about, although I guess it connects. The subject here is Narayan, not really the Virat Rup.
Yeah, so I was thinking of it because you asked, so maybe.
Okay, so the Virat Rup, whether it's what?
It is Satchidanand or it is not
No.
Satchidanand.
Virat Rup is a temporary manifestation of the Lord in terms of the material energy.
Okay, so it is material, it is not.
Spirit, it's in relation to Krishna, so it's spiritual, but it's spirit Krishna manifesting himself in terms of the material energy. So the material energy is temporary, and the Virat Rup, therefore, is temporarily manifested. Is that okay? Okay. Then there's a question down here, or something down here. Let's see. The chat box. I think it's just. Yeah, here we go. Panchatattva says, on the face of it, it sounds like Narayan is everything, fulfills the claim of the impersonalist, that everything and everyone is Narayan. No, Narayan is everything, but that doesn't mean that everything is Narayan. That the whole pie is everything doesn't mean that the slice is everything. The slice is the part, and the pie is the whole. Or Narayan is the whole. The living entities are the parts. The part has qualitative oneness with the whole. If the pie is pumpkin, then the slice is pumpkin. But it doesn't mean that the slice is the whole pie. So they're qualitatively one, quantitatively not one. Okay. Anything else? Bhakti Yoge Bhaktapai Jahar Darshan Suryayena Savigraha Deke Devagan. Through their service, devotees see that personality of Godhead, just as the denizens of heaven see the personality of the sun. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has his eternal form, which cannot be seen by material eyes or mental speculation. Only by transcendental devotional service can one understand the transcendental form of the Lord. Bhaktya mama vijanati. The comparison is made here to the qualifications for viewing the personal features of the sun god. The sun god is a person who, although not visible to our eyes, is seen from the higher planets by the demigods, whose eyes are suitable for seeing through the glaring sunshine that surrounds him. Every planet has its own atmosphere according to the influence of the arrangement of material nature. It is therefore necessary to have a particular type of bodily construction. It is therefore necessary to have a particular type of bodily construction to reach a particular planet. The inhabitants of Earth may be able to reach the moon, but the inhabitants of heaven can reach even the fiery sphere called the sun. What is impossible for man on earth is easy for the demigods in heaven because of their different bodies. Similarly, to see the Supreme Lord, one must have had the spiritual eyes of devotional service. Personality of Godhead is unapproachable by those who are habituated to speculation about the absolute truth in terms of experimental scientific thought, without reference to the transcendental vibration. The ascending approach to the absolute truth ends in the realization of impersonal Brahma and the localized Paramatma, but not the supreme transcendental personality. In distraction, I was just thinking on the bank of the Ganges, where Parikshit was sitting with Shukadeva Goswami, or at Naimisharanya, where the sages were sitting. So many of those sages must have been householders. if Yas stayed with the household or others. Can you imagine what the scene would have been like if they'd brought their children? One of the blessings of Zoom is that it gives householders the opportunity to attend the class with their children without distracting. So the idea is that to approach, to see the personality of Godhead, one has to have appropriate eyes. And then he's a person, he can be seen, just as the sun god can be seen by the qualified residents of heaven. The Lord is not, can't be seen by eyes of speculative knowledge. 5 new messages. Okay, it's more of the text. 6 new messages. Venkatesh says, in the previous purport, he exists in 3 states of consciousness, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, as well as beyond them. What are these states? And are these states of consciousness of the living entity or the Lord? The living entities have these 3 states, waking, sleeping, and sushupti, or deep sleep. Waking is our usual state of consciousness. Sleeping, we know, we sleep at night, we dream. And sushupti, deep sleep, is when you're so, well, the slang term is zonked, when you're so deeply asleep that you don't know anything. You don't dream, you don't think, you're just so deeply asleep that the only way we can say that there was such a state is that when you wake up, you say, I was deeply asleep, I don't remember anything. So that's deep sleep. And the Lord is, he himself exists in these 3 states and beyond them. Does that mean he exists in when we're in these 3 states, he's present there? His existence is still there. That would seem to be what's referenced here. Anything else about that? With Tulsi Priya, were you going to bounce off that? Or
A separate question on a separate part of the purport.
okay, so let's take Panchatattva's comment. Without reference to the transcendental vibration is an interesting phrase when applied to the limits of the speculators and scientific experimenters. Is it that Prabhupada is saying that without chanting the holy names, their access is curtailed? I don't think it's explicitly has to be the holy name. The Shastras are also on the level of transcendental vibration. So the speculators and scientists can take direction from the Vedic vibrations, or from the vibrations of Vedic knowledge, from Bhagavad Gita, from Srimad Bhagavatam, and then they can develop eyes of knowledge. Of course, chanting will also help them. By chanting, they can cleanse their consciousness. But my supposition here is that without reference to transcendental vibration means without reference to Shastra, Shastric knowledge. Vijay Krishna, how am I to accept that no one is equal to God when God should also be accepted as one living entity amongst the innumerable living entities in the material and spiritual worlds. Did the author of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta go to check all the living entities one by one in order to reach the conclusion that God is the supreme living entity and that no one is equal to him? Is it that such is the method required in order to establish God as the supreme living entity? No, the author of Chaitanya Charitamrta is not going to waste his valuable life interviewing every living entity to see whether that living entity might possibly be equal to God. Just like a boy doesn't have to interview, are you my father? Are you my father? Are you my father? Are you my... He asks his mother, mother says this is the father. Done. So our process is different. The speculative method or the empiric method will have you going on and on and on. Could it be this? Could it be this? Could it be this? Could it be that? But our method of hearing, shabda, and accepting authority brings us to the conclusion. So Kaviraj Goswami is not one of the mental speculators or empiricists. He's receiving knowledge from the authorities, as indicated in the previous purport. Narayan Samhita, the Upanishads, this, that. So we don't have to do all that research. We accept the conclusions of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, the Shruti, Smriti, and our research is done. Tulsi Priya.
Hi, Krishna Maharaj, please accept my obeisances. In the beginning of the purport, it says the Supreme Personality of Godhead has his eternal form, which cannot be seen by material eyes or mental speculation. So instantly that reminded me of the past time when Krishna is in the wrestling match before Kamsa, and it's describing how all the different people in the wrestling match saw Krishna, and the wrestlers saw him one way, Kamsa saw him, I think, as death personified, if I'm remembering correctly. The ladies saw him as another way. So my question is demon like Kamsa, if he has material eyes, what is he seeing when he sees Krishna if Krishna's eternal form cannot be seen by material eyes?
He's seeing, but he's not seeing. Sometimes like my glasses are sitting on some like a tablecloth with a pattern on it, and I can't see them. Even though I'm seeing them, I'm not seeing them. They look just like tablecloth is there. Or I think Prabhupada gave this example, if the Queen of England were to enter the room, to me, she looks like another old lady. How do I know who she is? Unless my eyes are informed by authorities, she was just another old woman, nicely dressed, but otherwise, the Queen of England, I wouldn't know. The sun appears to be like a ball in the sky. It's only when I have scientific knowledge that I understand it's 93 million miles away, it's huge, it's got all of this and that. So they're seeing, and then they're seeing. Someone gave the example the other day that we're hearing, and by hearing, someone says, "Oh, now I see." Now I see. So that, yes. So even that expression is there in second canto. Pashanapi napashati. Even while seeing, we don't see. But or else vimudha na anupashanti. Pashanti jnana chakshusha. The Bhagavad Gita. The fools na anupashanti. They don't see through the eyes of authorities, and therefore they don't actually see. But Pashanti Jnana Chakshusha. Those who have knowledge, eyes of knowledge, they see. When we have eyes of knowledge, we can see things as they are. Otherwise, the eyes are, they're seeing, but they're not seeing.
It's similar to Maharaj, like, a glass, the piece somebody made, mistake a diamond as a piece of glass. It's not trained
Yeah.
in.
Without training, we see a diamond to be a piece of glass or a piece of glass to be a diamond. We see so many things mistakenly. And somebody has to take us by the hand and say, no, this is this. Oh, now I see. Kendra Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. When I heard this sentence in the purport that it is therefore necessary to have a particular type of bodily construction to reach a particular planet, and then bouncing that back off the very beginning of the translation, through their service, devotees see that personality of Godhead, just as the denizens of heaven see the personality of the sun. It made me think of in my limited experience in deity worship, how before you worship the deity, you essentially, through mantras and mudras, it's like you put on a certain kind of spiritual body armor, or you worship the Lord in your spiritual body, because you can't just get up and think that you're going to worship the Lord like you pour a bowl of cornflakes or something. And it's like, and it also reminded me how when we chant the holy name with some attention, you feel different. It's like through that service you're able to see things in a very different way. It's not an ordinary thing. So Prabhupada likes to give the example of the astronauts. They have to put on a suit if they're going to go someplace different, or else they can't exist there.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Vibhuti Bindam, every place has its own atmosphere and has to have the suitable bodily construction. So actually to see Krishna, one needs eyes of devotion, then one can see. Is that a hand that's still up, Tulsi Priya, or is it up again?
It was still up. I was just remembering when you were mentioning the Queen, that there's a story about how some American tourists were touring one of the Queen's properties, and they actually met her, but she was dressed in ordinary clothes and wearing a headscarf. And they asked her if the Queen lived nearby, and she said, yes, she does. Then they asked her, had she ever met the Queen? And she said, no, I haven't, but she pointed to her protection officer and said, he's met the Queen. And then they walked on without ever realizing who they'd met.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, these things are there. Yeah. I can think of other literary examples, but they don't really advance our spiritual understanding, so we'll skip them. Thank you.
Maharaj, one sentence caught my eye here, when Prabhupada is saying that the inhabitants of earth may be able to reach the moon. But when the actual so-called moon landing happened, Prabhupada said they have not landed on moon.
Our attention is caught by phrase, the inhabitants of earth may be able to reach the moon, although Prabhupada said they didn't go to the moon. So this is what a hypothetical argument. Now, even if they could go to the moon, they still wouldn't be able to, and that's the point, they still wouldn't be able to reach the sun. All right, let's suppose they went to the moon. Even if they went to the moon, they wouldn't be able to go to the sun. They'd burn up. So hypothetically, so what's impossible for man on earth is easy for the demigods. We don't have to argue about whether they went to the moon, they didn't go to the moon. Even the expression in law is arguendo. For the sake of argument, if they went to the moon, still they wouldn't be able to go to the sun. That's the motive discourse.
Maharaj, like, is it said somewhere in the scriptures, actually the moon that we see here is not what the Shastra says, the moon. The moon that we see from the earth is not the moon that the scriptures are referring to, because the moon is, they say it's far above the sun.
No, there's no such reference like that.
Okay.
The question is there a Shastric reference that the moon that we see is not the moon referred to in Shastra? No. There's no such indication. We assume that it's the same moon, but what we see is different. We just see again, we see a ball in the sky, and doesn't look particularly big. Compared to the trees, it's not even as big as the nearest tree, right? In our field of vision. So we're seeing something. We're seeing the moon, but what is the extent of our seeing? It's the same thing, that we're seeing the queen, but we don't really see the queen. It is the same queen, but without eyes of knowledge, all we see is an elderly lady. But we don't see the queen. So the moon may be the same moon, but without qualification, we won't really see the moon. We won't understand what's there. We won't be able to see. Even there, like there may be, so many examples could be given. There's a very important message, where someone's going to declare war, or some very thing. But if it's written in Chinese, even though I can see it without the necessary knowledge, to me it's just another piece of paper with some squiggles on it. Maybe I might understand that it's Chinese, but I won't understand the important message. We may see the moon, but what do we see? We need eyes of knowledge. Vijay Krishna says, is it accurate to say that without the spiritual master, the disciple will go on blind to spiritual truth? Is it that the spiritual master is the eyes of the disciple? In what measure? Chakshun militam jena tasmai shri gurave namah. Gyananjana shalakaya. The spiritual master opens the eyes of the disciples so that he can see. And without the spiritual master, yes, we won't have those eyes of knowledge, which means effectively we're groping about in the dark, or close to the dark. Shall we move ahead? Jnana yoga marge tare bhaje ye shav brahma atma rupe tare kore anubhav. Those who walk the paths of knowledge and yoga worship only him, for it is him they perceive as the impersonal Brahma and localized Paramatma. Purport: those who are fond of mental speculation, jnana marg, or want to meditate in mystic yoga to find the absolute truth, must approach the impersonal effulgence of the Lord and his partial representation, respectively. Such persons cannot realize the eternal form of the Lord. I think that's clear.
I have a question. So here it's being underlined that the devotional service is the only way we can approach Krishna and not by jnana or by reading scriptures. Is that correct, Mr.?
By jnana or by mystic yoga. Jnana is the approach that will bring one to the impersonal Brahma at best, and mystic yoga may bring one to the Paramatma, but not beyond that. To realize the personality of Godhead, one has to take to the path of devotional service.
Now, the actual question, Maharaj, I have is that how do we then understand that now reading Shastra is important, and then how do we say that, okay, this is different and it falls under the category of devotional service versus, trying jnana, going on the marg of jnana?
Yes, the one thing is that we're reading Shastra within the context of devotional service. It's not just a speculative enterprise. The speculators are essentially relying on their intelligence, relying on their discriminative capability and trying to figure things out. Their source of knowledge is their intelligence. The devotees are relying on Shastra as their source of knowledge. Intelligence is still employed, but it's employed to understand the message of Shastra. Therefore, Krishna says that those who Jnani Agena Aham, it's just down in the 18th chapter, that those who are studying this Bhagavad Gita are worshiping me by their intelligence. They're not just speculating, well, I think this could be that, in my opinion. They're submissively hearing. The Shastra is meant to be heard from the Guru in a submissive fashion. Tad Vijnanartam Sa Guru. So in a Shrotriyam Tad Vidhi Pranipate is what he says. So when we hear the Shastra under the guidance of the spiritual master, then we're in the transcendental process of devotion, and we make progress. The mental speculators are in a different. Yes.
I'm thinking in Caitanya Caritamrta we see Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Prakashananda Saraswati, Keshav Kashmiri, Digvijay Pandit. These are, on the surface we see that they fall in Jnani categories, guide philosophers, Vedantists. When I'm thinking in my mind that is it also there is something that because they have read the Vedantas seriously, they qualify to get in touch with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, that because they, in these three cases, they all were able to get in.
There's so many who read Vedanta and they don't get anywhere. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya got the association of his brother-in-law, Gopinath Bhattacharya. He had the association of the devotee. The devotee was wishing if my brother-in-law would only get it. That was one thing. And another thing is that he appreciated Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This sannyasi is very nice, beautiful young man. I should try to be of some service to him. So those qualifications. The Prakashananda Saraswati,
He saw this again. This sannyasi is very, very nice, and he Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sort of flashed his glowing effulgence at them, so they could appreciate something. And finally, they got the causeless mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They could have gone on speculating for thousands of years and not gone anywhere, but they got the causeless mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so their minds changed. Otherwise, you can go on studying Vedanta for something. Of course, it's a qualification. They're applying their minds to transcendental subject matters. But Tapi te deva bhajam tvaya prasadale Tapi te deva bhajam tvaya prasadale shana grihita jana tattvam bhagavan one may go on speculating for thousands of years and not understand. But a person who's got a little remnant of mercy from your lotus feet, Janati Tattvam, they can understand something of the glories of the Lord. It's by the mercy of the Lord, by the mercy of the devotees, that such stubborn speculators as Prakashananda Saraswati and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya were able to understand and become great devotees. Sometimes it's by the mercy of the devotee, sometimes by the mercy of the Lord himself.
Looking at the chat box and let's see what I see. Saraswati says, were the demons like Ravana and Hiranyakashipu meditating on Krishna as Paramatma too for mystic powers? For receiving benedictions from demigods. Now, it's not mentioned that they were just undergoing tapasya. If Hiranyakashipu was thinking of Vishnu, it was only, he killed my brother, I'll kill him. There was he wasn't like a mystic yogi who was searching for the absolute truth. He was just after powers, that's all. And who was he meditating? Meditating on Brahma. Brahma comes, then that can become immortal. Ravana, he wasn't meditating on personality. Got it? Of course, he had some devotion to Lord Shiva. So indirectly, what is that? Ye penya devata bhakta yajante shraddhayanvita tepi manevakante yajantya vidhi purvakam. So when the demons are worshiping Lord Shiva or worshiping Kali or whoever they're worshiping,
Brahmaji.
Indirectly they're worshiping Krishna, but a vidhi purvakam in the wrong way. So what did Ravana achieve? He got killed. He didn't achieve spiritual knowledge. Yes.
Like you mentioned that the knowledge and the devotional service, right?
Mhm.
So, like devotional service should be favorable. Sorry, the knowledge should be used in the devotional service, or like if somebody doing just a devotional service, the knowledge automatically will export to him, or like just I'm trying to understand, is it possible like they just keep on
Trying to
doing
understand.
devotional service?
What?
Like just keep on doing devotional service and knowledge will automatically come,
If you-
or
Do we apply knowledge in devotional service, or does it automatically come? Is that the question?
Yeah, like I'm trying to understand the knowledge is compulsory for the person who
Is knowledge
really
compulsory or does
doesn't-
knowledge automatically come? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, knowledge automatically comes. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayati Ashu Vairagyam Gyanam Sharyavavartika. One engages in devotional service automatically, very soon, Ashu, he'll develop Vairagya and Gyan, detachment and transcendental knowledge, simply by devotional service. In devotional service, knowledge plays a supporting role, but simply by cultivation of knowledge, one can't get devotional service. They're big speculators, they go on cultivating knowledge. Of course, finally, if they come to the conclusion in their search for knowledge, they realize Vasudeva Swami, Krishna is everything, let me surrender. Gyanavan, when they actually get knowledge, they surrender to Krishna. So an intelligent person thinks, well, if I'm going to surrender to Krishna when I get knowledge, I might as well surrender now. Why should I waste thousands of years in 1880 analysis and logical discrimination? If the conclusion is to surrender to Krishna, let me surrender now. But even a person without knowledge, if he surrenders, Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam, Yenamam Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, someone's constantly engaged in serving me with love, I give him the knowledge by which to come to me. Automatically, he becomes the most learned person. And even the most learned persons without Krishna consciousness remain fools.
Vijay Krishna says, why is it that only by accepting the descending process of knowledge can we approach God? Is it that the ascending process could be compared to us being arrogant, in the sense that if God is a person, it is up to him to accept our association or not, in the way he chooses? Is the ascending process no better than trying to force God to reveal himself to us in a method not pleasing to him because of lacking in humility?
That's not a bad analysis. That it's a sort of arrogance to think that by my puny intelligence, I'll understand the unlimited absolute. One can approach God or by the speculative process, but it'll be very slow and very difficult. It's the long road. Klesho dikataraste sham. Those who are following the speculative process and becoming attracted to the impersonal, they'll have a hard time. So the speculative process is long and arduous. Same thing, you want to understand anything. By speculation, it may take you a long time. You accept the authority. Why do we consult maps? Why do we log on to Google? Why do we look in a dictionary? Why do we consult any authority? You can do research to search out whatever it is that you would find by those methods, but that's the long, hard way. The child who's lost, his parents say, ask a policeman. If you're lost, find a policeman. The policeman takes you by the hand and says, okay, we'll get you back home. But if you wander the streets, you can do that for weeks and not find your way. You may make progress or not. But when we accept authority, then we quickly, anything, that's our practical way of doing anything. Rather than just try to figure everything out. And your refrigerator breaks. You go to YouTube and you find out, okay, here's the video that shows you what to do. And you follow step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And the biggest mental speculators, that's what they do. Unless, as you said, they're very arrogant that, why should I, and they can figure everything out by themselves. And often they wind up breaking whatever it was that they're trying to fix. Praveen says, knowledge automatically comes, in quotes. If from day one someone just chants Hare Krishna or any other anga of bhakti without hearing or reading the books, can he achieve perfection? Yes. But then he has to chant perfectly. He has to chant Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu's mind. Any one of these items, if practiced fully, can lead one to perfection. But we're guided that you do this, you hear, you chant, you read, you serve. The spiritual master guides us, because these different methods will support one another. They'll help us. Otherwise, if someone can simply focus on chanting, absolutely attain perfection. But who's going to do that? We chant for 15 minutes and we're looking here and there and writing lists and making notes to ourselves about what we have to do later in the day, and wondering if there are any email messages from me and this and that. So yes, any one of these methods can be sufficient in itself. But the acharyas are showing us the way. By their practical example, you worship the deity, you chant the mantra, you read the books, you serve the devotees, you do so many things. And they'll all help us. And they'll work synergistically. Okay, we're at 7:59. Okay. Krishna Kontia, did we fix your sound issue? Doesn't seem like we did. No. Okay.
Maybe, Maharaj, maybe next time we meet, Krishna Kunteya can sign on a little early along with my husband, and we might walk through the,
Trouble.
yeah.
Yeah, you can try that, Krishna Kontia, so that we can have the benefit of your kirtan.
Yeah.
And since we don't, we'd like to leave.
I'll do if someone else doesn't want to.
They all really want to, but they're shy. So.
Well, come on, someone. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad Purnamamsa Paripradacharya Ashto Tirasati Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Anand Ki Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Nam Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Shadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kun Radha Kun Ki Govardhan Ki Jai Pavan Dham Ki Jai Dham Ki Jai Jagat Ki Jai Ram Ki Jai Ramana Ki Jai Bhut Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone on Zoom, and thank you, everyone who's come here also. Hare Krishna.
Thanks so much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Gurudev.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Lali Prasad. Thank you, Hare Krishna. Okay. Thank you all again. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.